Warning: the Federal Communications Commission has determined the following content to be emotionally harmful. Snowflakes should not view this content under any circumstances, even if supervised by a G.I. Joe, Navy SEALs, Army vet, or someone with good common sense. The views and opinions expressed, including the depictions of persons of color, corrupt politicians, white people with or without a tan, haters who have yet to brush their teeth typing angrily in the comment section with hot breath syndrome, do not reflect any official policy or position of the U.S. government. This program contains graphic language, dark comedy, unique intelligence, creativity, a high credit score, and high blood pressure when triggered. This program has also been accused of racism, violence, misogyny, mansogyny, feminism, MGTOWism, defacement of celebrities, and of course, being a bully. Welcome to Thought Crimes.
What's up, everybody? This is your man P Solo Prince Solomon back in the building. Yes, let's get into it right now. The Clipse are back outside. Yes, folks, we have moved past the drill music. That's right, folks. We've moved past the drill music, the post dancing on the ops grave, and now we have officially returned back to that brotherly love, that family black-owned business, all that heavenly glory of the COINTELPRO crack talk. All right, all jokes aside, Ace Trumpets, of course, produced by Pharrell, the Holy Trinity. No Malice, because you know formerly Malice, but now No Malice, along with Pusha-T. Pusha-T decides to relink with his brother. He said it himself, he has been trying to get his brother to get back in the studio for some time. Y'all know at one point in time, Malice, then one half of the dynamic duo known as the Clipse, decided to take a sabbatical. He came out with some kind of, pseudo-Christian religious, exposing the dark esoteric nature of the industry. He came back with some tracks, he had spirit cooking, and, he was talking about all of this spirit cooking that was going on in the industry. Now, because he's a talented MC, listen, I'm not going to lie to you all. Prince Solomon gave it a listen, and I said, you know what? I can deal with this. If this is what he wants to do, if he wants to speak in this language and talk about exposing the industry, fine, I'm all for it. But nonetheless, though, Pusha T said, man, we got to get back in there and we got to talk about that crack. We got to talk about that crack because I can't keep doing it by myself because everybody keeps saying, Pusha, you're too old. You can't keep talking about it. And look, let's be real about it. It's what Pharrell said. Malice, now No Malice, them working together, he just adds something a little bit different and it gives it more of a denser approach as a duo. That's who they are. That's how we got to know the Clipse, and later on it branched out into the Re-Up gang, REUPGANG, right? So they're back with this wonderfully brilliant produced track. It's called Ace Trumpets. Now, Pusha, of course, he has some things to kind of get off of his chest. I actually do believe, in my personal opinion, they work off of each other very well, but No Malice definitely has a very, very, very notable moment on this particular track here. But let's get into Pusha T. Pusha T, he had some bars that, he talked about people like him and him waiting for Yeezy. Now, we got to talk about that for a second, folks. Now, you know that Ye or Yahtzee Ye or whatever you want to call him at this point in time, it's not Kanye West. It's clearly everything post Yeezy, and it's Yahtzee Ye has been out in these streets with these white hoods on. He's been running around with the alt-right, the far-right, the post-neocons, the Republicans, whatever you can, again, whatever. I don't care, right? Pro-MAGA Ye. It is what it is, right? But in the process, because of how much power Ye has acquired during his extensive career, there are people waiting on Ye hand and foot, even if he's stepping on their hands and feet, right? So Pusha said, man, get out of here. I had a career before even Kanye. We're not even talking about Yeezus. We're not talking about Yandi. We're not talking about Ye. We're not talking about Yahtzee. He says, basically, I had a career before Kanye even came up, right? And so he most notably goes back to Pharrell Williams, a fellow Virginian, right? And he brings out his brother No Malice. But he says, while him waiting for Yeezy, I hope y'all got y'all squeegees, because y'all sure gonna be begging. Y'all sure gonna be pulling these streets. And we did see something of that nature with the likes of Ty Dolla $ign. Ty Dolla $ign kind of got in trouble running around with Ye or Yachty Yeezy, right? Because what happened was, hey, yo, the ADL was getting at him. A lot of people in the industry was getting at him. And it was alleged that if he kept running around with trash bag dressed Ye, they were going to clip his artist. They were going to stop him from performing at Rolling Loud. They was going to stop him from doing his West Coast venues because, that's where Ty Dolla $ign makes most of his money. It's kind of out of them, venues that are kind of like the Rolling Loud knockoffs. So he said, hey, man, I don't tolerate no hate. Let me back up out of here. Now, he almost got turned into a squeegee holder. He has a dope joint out right now with YG. And remember, Sincere Ignorance did a wonderful job breaking down the video concerning YG, Hollywood. And then we doubled back on the deluxe. And then we start talking about it as well. So Pusha is saying, I got to keep this thing moving. And I'm going to be honest with you. Me and Sin had a conversation about this. My personal opinion, I prefer Pusha, not only with his brother No Malice, but I actually prefer his voice and his direction and art with Pharrell. I feel Pharrell understands Pusha way better than Kanye, Ye, Yeezy, Yachty. Don't get me wrong. I think there was some dope tracks off of Daytona. I think there was some other stuff that they've worked together very well. Look, I mean, the good music era of Pusha-T, it really wasn't bad. I just feel Pusha shines better with Pharrell. Okay, it's just, look, you can't go wrong. Look, Ye working with Pusha has not produced no type of body of work with Pusha that tops Hell Hath No Fury, Lord Willing, even to the casket drop, okay? I'm just going to be honest with you about that, all right? So my personal opinion, I'm glad the separation happened. I kind of felt like it was holding things up. You guys got to go back to when Common and, we're talking about Big Sean, Tiana Taylor, Pusha-T, we're talking about Kid Cudi. Actually, you could argue that Kanye West had the last, if not the best, dope roster of musicians in hip-hop when he had good music. And basically, that wasn't nothing but a giant glorified OVO sweatshop. I'm going to be honest with you. This is before OVO sweatshop becomes a thing. So a lot of those guys were pulling, and those women, including Tiana Taylor, they was pulling a lot of resources into Ye. So I'm very happy that the Clipse are coming back. Now, I thought about it for a second. I said, damn, you know what? I actually forgot about the Clipse. Not that there was like an erasure of them. It's just that up until now, they were largely defunct. You either have one member die, unfortunately, like, Mobb Deep when it came to Prodigy, one of my favorite rappers of all time, and Havoc, one of my favorite producers of all time, right? But, one of the members died. And then you have the other side of the game, like Outkast, Big Boy, and Andre 3000. They just kind of stopped. Nobody knows what happened. It's just like they stopped, but they seem to be hanging out with each other. And so you kind of feel like, oh, well, maybe they're like Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, and they just kind of got old, right? But with the Clipse, Malice decided to part from the group. And Malice also said at that time that his music, he felt, was the soundtrack to murder. Now, up until that point, I actually understood it. I said, you know what? I can see where he's coming from with that. But then drill music happens. And boy, oh boy, that murder rate went into a whole nother level. I'm talking about Afghanistan level. I'm talking about post 9/11 levels. I'm talking about weapons of mass destruction level. So of course, more than likely, Malice is probably like, you know what? I think I can come back. Matter of fact, let me just go back to No Malice, or let me come up with No Malice, and I can come back because I'm not dancing on people's graves. Like, this is absurd. So let me come back and rap about different fabrics. And that's one thing I liked about the difference between Pusha and No Malice, even though vocally they're similar, although I can argue that you can feel when No Malice is speaking because he kind of has like a higher overtone, right? But lyrically, they have different approaches. Pusha-T is what you're going to get. It's kind of like that post Ice-T, I'm your Pusha energy. This is what I'm here to do. This is how I get busy. This is what I love to rap about. Versus No Malice, he's going to be a lot more introspective. You saw it on tracks from Lord Willin'. You've seen that before. And so with No Malice, he's going to come out and rap about a little bit more different things. I think they're both lyricists in their own right. I just feel that No Malice, formerly Malice, is going to be a lot more descriptive in his approach. I mean, even right down to some of the stuff they kind of wrap around with the player mentality, right? So, Pusha is going to talk about a car. He's going to talk about pulling up in a foreign rib. He's going to talk about these things. But if you ever notice with No Malice, he starts telling you about different fabric patterns, and he's going to be telling you about the cotton threads on his pillow. Like, he's very descriptive. He's going to be a lot more intimate, and I usually describe their styles, or the difference in their styles is that, No Malice is going to be a lot more descriptive. Even if you go back to the track on Lord Willin', I'm Not You, both of them gave a very, very, very good performance. But No Malice featuring Jadakiss and Styles P, No Malice, or then Malice at the time, he went into a whole nother stratosphere. He talked about, basically selling crack to the women on the corner, and the heartbroken mothers coming up to them and trying to buy the drugs, and they heartbroken and I'm their savior. It was just very descriptive, very Edgar Allan Poe. That's what I would say about Malice, formerly Malice, now No Malice. But this track here is awesome. I love it, man. I love the energy. Pharrell does not miss a beat. Look, I'm gonna keep it real with you. Even though we're talking about Yandhi, Yachty, Ye, definitely one of the top producers in hip hop. But for me personally, the crown would have to rest on Pharrell Williams' head. I'm gonna be honest with you. It would have to rest on Pharrell Williams' blazing face head, because Pharrell just always keeps this very crisp production, and he's very versatile. I mean, if you can go from I'm Happy to something like this, and then you can traverse in the other direction with some of the joints he did with the NERD, of course, with Chad as well. But, fantastic. And I'm very excited. The rollout is very interesting. I do think the rollout for this album, I appreciate it. I'm not going to lie to you all. Because, listen, outside of what we saw, of course, with GNX, with Kendrick Lamar, sometimes Big Sean steps into it, sometimes he doesn't. But this here is a very effective rollout. Some of the teasers, the trailers, it does remind me of the era of No Seat at the Table. It reminds me of the era of Lemonade. It reminds me of the era of 444 and the Carters. And I'm almost talking about the cinematography of the teasers and the trailers, just to put that out there. So I actually like the idea that they're having this cinematic approach to what it is that they're going to be rolling out. And I really do mess with the track, but I'm very interested because, again, like I stated earlier, when it came to duos in hip hop, and I want you guys to share your dynamic duos in hip hop as well when it comes to rap. But, for me, it's always going to be Outkast. Then now that the Clipse are activated, the Clipse are number 2. And then, of course, for me, Mobb Deep would be number 3. But you guys can share your comments, about who you guys like. But nonetheless, I'm definitely happy to hear them together. I'm not going to lie to you all. I kind of feel like, or felt like in the past, that a lot of people kind of throwing on their best Clipse, Pusha-T, Malice, No Malice rendition at times when they're doing like the cocaine talk. Now, I know some of the people are going to get into their bag about, this, that, and third. But look, Martin Scorsese is 120 years old, and he's still making The Irishman, some other joints, 88 Minutes. Robert De Niro and Al Pacino going to keep acting in these films. So it is what it is. It's what comes with the territory, and it's a way of life that people have lived, or you have artists that are pretending to live. But nonetheless, I think the real shining moment here is their unity. They haven't lost step with each other, because sometimes when groups or duos or trios get back together, you can kind of hear like they're a little bit out of sync with each other. I've seen that a few times on the later Wu-Tang projects. I think like with 9 Diagrams. Now, damn. To be fair, Wu-Tang has been a hip-hop institution for like 30 plus years at this point. So I don't expect them to knock out everything. They got so many albums, so many affiliates, so many side mixtapes, so many independent joints, so many major joints as well. So not everything is going to be a knockout. But for the Clipse to have been defunct for so much time and for them to be able to come back along with Pharrell Williams, Chancellor Williams, and they are all able to shine, I think is remarkable. It definitely kind of makes you wonder, possibly how many more classics we would have gotten out of, Pusha-T and now No Malice, because, you have, Hell Hath No Fury. That's a classic. Of course, Lord Willin' is a classic. And then you had some of their predated joints as well, like audio footage and stuff of that nature. That was really good as well. But I always wonder, I say, where would they have went with how many more classics? Would they have had something similar to what we see with Outkast? Possibly 3 or 4 classics, or what we've seen with Kendrick as of recently. People are arguing with 3 classics or 4 classics with him. When we start getting into this percentile range, like this is an elite tier of MC and elite tier of artistry that we're going to be seeing. Now, I understand that there's supposed to be a Kendrick drop in there as well. I'm sure he's going to do his thing. I'll be interested to see if Jay-Z pops up. Sid and I have been talking about it. If Jay-Z is going to be popping up, it would be very interesting to see what does he have to say. But I'm also more interested in Malice, No Malice now, and Pusha T's conversations on these upcoming tracks. I want to know, where has their mind been? Because you got to keep in mind, they're vets in the game. They've actually influenced a lot of people. So I would actually like to know, how do they view where the music industry is right now? Especially I want to hear from No Malice, because you got to remember, No Malice has always spoken in the moment consciously about what he's going through and what he's feeling. And yeah, there's the part of him where he enjoys the high life with his brother, but there's the other side of him where he doesn't enjoy it as much. And does he feel like, where's his influence? Because back then, you got to keep in mind, this is before the drill music takes off. Back then, when then Malice was retiring about the game, he was already saying he was feeling his influence up until that point. And you guys got to remember, they popped out a little bit before what Jeezy becomes. Jeezy becomes a real known, because when we talk about the re-emergence of the coke wave drug talk, we got to talk about George W. Bush and them poppy fiends. But that's another story, all right? Because I always say, very interesting, coke rap shows back up right when we're back in Afghanistan securing the poppy fiends, but that's another story. But you got to keep in mind, the Clipse were a part of taking that re-emerging sound of coke talk, or crack talk, better yet, and drug talk to the next level. And this is also what further encourages T.I., Clifford Harris, and then, of course, Mr. Jenkins himself, Young Jeezy, and then you have OJ the Juice Man, particularly that southeastern board when I'm talking about Virginia all the way down to Georgia, even tapping into Florida. You really saw a re-emergence of the coke talk, but the Clipse were definitely a major contributing engine of that re-emerging sound of drug talk, even so much so that it encouraged Raekwon and Ghostface Killah to come back outside. And then that's when Raekwon did Cuban Links 2, and then he had Ghostface all over the joint as well. Again, another dynamic duo also, so that's another conversation to be had as well. But anyway, with this track here, Ace Trumpets, I think is wonderful. I did laugh at Pusha T's shots at Kanye, saying niggas gonna have squeegees in their hands waiting for this trash bag dressed nigga. And also, he kind of threw some shots in there on some subs when we're talking about the likes of Drake and Kanye, because we know Kanye went on his rant, or Ye went on his rant, talking about, Pusha stood on his shoulders to take out Drake. And then that's why you hear Pusha saying life is peachy like ASAP and Riri, basically. And then, of course, No Malice did the damn thing when he was just breaking down the conscious state of where he was. And he's also, in a way, he was playing with his words to let everybody know that, look, I know a lot of people kind of do what they do, but we're not the same. And I typically tend to agree. That's where I do see a lot of people that have over the years emulated aspects of the Clipse. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, leave your comments below. What do you think about this track by No Malice, Chancellor Williams, Pusha-T, and Ace's Trumpets? And where's your take on it? And again, as far as duos go, and again, Ace Trumpets, just to be clear, Ace Trumpets. Some people are like, yo, it's Ace Trumpets, Prince. Damn, man. No, Ace Trumpets, right? But for you all, leave your comments. Tell me who are all time great duos for you all. Even if you want to say trios, counting, Pharrell Williams, because I kind of consider them a trio. Because listen, the Clipse don't sound like the Clipse unless they're running with Pharrell. I know they've had guest features, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I was not looking forward to a Kanye West Clipse joint. I think there's some tracks that work well with Pusha, possibly No Malice, but I feel Pharrell is the only nigga that really understands these two guys. All right. So leave your comments below. I'm your man, Prince Solomon P. Solo. I am out. Peace.
To this day. To this day.
You shouldn't turn your back on me.
Is that a challenge?
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
White folks are nosy. They have specials. Nosy specials. Why does a bee make honey? You ain't a bee. Why do you give a fuck?
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
If he dies, he dies.
Go to our Patreon for more, and don't bother me.